this is an awesome market to talk about. It is really interesting. And I think you can come away from it with a lot of different opinions. I don't have to be right. I don't think this is like rock solid, like I got it nailed. I think there are two conversations we probably have to have in the first hour of the show. One is the usual conversation. What's the lay of the land? Kind of how do I see everything right now? Are there, how would I price everyone? What do I think is going to happen? And then the second part of the conversation is if you have Dak Prescott at a big price, because you heard me talking about it on the show, that I bet a lot of it, what should you do? Or how about like, what did I do? And then you can do whatever you want. So it's kind of like, if people have Dak, I promise, like I got a ton of notes from people like, what do I do? Like, this is really awesome, but like now I'm all, people get nervous because like it's really fun. Like they're holding like a winning lottery ticket, maybe at a big price. And so want to make sure that those people kind of like get their answer. And because I think there's a lot of them, honestly. But in addition to that, I think we start by just being like, how do I kind of see things right now? I'd like to pivot away from who I think should win most valuable player, which I think you're going to get a lot of this week. Well, I think this guy should win because of this. I would try to pivot away from that as we're nearing the final quarter of the season now and pivot more toward who does it seem like everyone's talking about. Usually these are people who either vote or are like sort of think the same way as other people who vote. Who are they talking about? Who are they thinking about? Who are they not talking and thinking about? And that's interesting. Like that name hasn't come up at all. And I'd rather handicap the final quarter of the season that way now that we're like so close to the finish line. At the halfway point, first quarter, first 4 weeks of the season, we're all guessing. The voters are guessing. We're all bad at predictions. None of us know what's going to happen. So it's in that case like it is who I think should win, and I'm going to try to make my best guess about what I think the voters are going to do. We're close to the finish line now. If they're not talking about a guy, I shouldn't be betting on that guy. Like, and give you an example. No one's talking about Tua at all. 0.0%. I think he can't win. Like, can't win. Not even like there's less than I actually think he's almost like can't win. And I say that it's slightly hyperbolic, but I really mean that. I would never bet him. I would tell other people not to bet him. That's what I'm talking about. He has a low price. Like, I think if you consume all the content out there, I don't get the idea he's even eligible anymore. I feel like he's out. And I don't think there's enough time left to get back, honestly. I start to get the same sense about Lamar Jackson. I absolutely get that sense about Patrick Mahomes. Like, there are players where if you, again, like, it's who I think, who cares? What are they saying? What are they talking about? I don't get the sense any of these players are even live for the award anymore. And I'm going to choose to bet that way. And if Lamar wins and he has a great final month of the season and he wins, I'll be wrong, but I'm approaching it that way. I'm trying to kind of gauge temperature as best I can of how people feel about the award with so few games remaining. And so I think the easiest thing is who are they not talking about? And then in the next segment, it's who are they talking about? How would we order those players? And can we come up with like a strategy to approach this to try to cover as many players as we think can win as possible? Example, Bill Barnwell wrote a piece for ESPN this past week about NFL most valuable player. Listing his sort of the point of the piece was here's all the MVP candidates. It's a wide open field this year. His nominee for the Niners was Christian McCaffrey. Just to give you an idea of like the potential, and we talked about this last week. Like Purdy might be the bet going into the Eagles game, but the pushback, and it's loud, is he's like the 9th best player on his own team. And like, are we really going to get like the quarterback award? Are we really going to do this? And I think he's ahead for a lot of people right now. But when push comes to shove at the end, and if there is another candidate, I think he loses a tiebreaker to like anybody, honestly, that's going to be there at the end. But I don't think there's a lot of guys who can be there at the end. That's what's making his case better. They're dropping like flies, honestly. There may not be a candidate there at the end. What if Dak loses a couple times? What if Tyreek doesn't get 2,000 yards? Like, there just isn't anybody. What if the Bills lose one more game? There isn't anybody else. And so it might be Purdy because, like, whatever, I guess it's Brock Purdy. Write the name down. I don't even believe in this. Like, that's how he wins, honestly, because they're going to win a bunch of games, and he's going to have pretty good numbers, and he's going to be there at the end. So I think if the question is, if Dak loses 2 or more, and Brock Purdy is uninspiring statistically down the stretch, everybody else has big games, and he's just kind of doing whatever, who wins? I think some people would say, well, Jalen Hurts. They have a big record. If Tyreek gets 2,000 yards and those first two things happen, I think he wins. I think everyone talks themselves into a non-quarterback winning because the first two guys didn't materialize, because Dak lost a couple, because Brock Purdy's numbers weren't particularly good down the stretch. I think that's actually who wins. And this is the first week I've felt like that. And I get the sense out there that there's enough support for that especially over Tua, honestly, which is going to be the pushback. Nobody wants Tua to win. There's none of that. It's all Tyreek Hill. That's all it is. Don't let somebody tell you like Tua's the guy that's going to win. If they go nuts, no one's thinking that right now. I think in a tiebreaker situation where he and Purdy had even comparable records separated by a game or two in the standings, both big time records, Dak is very likely to throw for more yards and have more touchdowns this year. He's ahead in both of those categories right now. And he plays Buffalo's secondary. He plays Detroit at home in the second leg. What's the total in that game? 71? He's going to throw for a lot of yards and have a lot of touchdowns. I think he wins all tiebreakers against Brock Purdy. That's the sense that I get. And I just think everyone wants this to happen. I think everyone wants to vote for Dak to win MVP, and he has to make it happen by winning the games. So it's a tougher case to make than Brock Purdy. Brock Purdy's going to win the games. They're going to be minus 28 against every single team that they play. Dak's not going to be like that, but he's also going to play in a lot of high-profile games. And then I think where people get tripped up is they say, well, but okay, let's say he beats Philly. They're a favorite in the game. Plays Buffalo, plays Miami, plays Detroit. That's a really tough schedule. And that's right. He's more likely to lose games. There's no question. He's more likely to lose games than Brock Purdy is. Where I think people seem to be making a mistake, and I get this when I read all the stuff that's out there, there's a sense among people who bet that if they don't win the division, or they don't have the number one seed, or they don't win all these games, he can't win. I'm here to tell you, I think you're dead wrong if you think that's the case. All of the pieces that are out there, Peter King wrote on Monday morning, if they don't win the division, I would definitely give it to him anyway. Already wrote it. It's just, we're there already. Everyone wants this to happen. And I want it to happen too, but even if I didn't, I would acknowledge people seem to want this to happen. If the Eagles win 14 games and the Cowboys win 13 games, I think he's winning.
Connor, let's go to a game where we have less certainty, right? And that's going to be the Jaguars and the Browns coming up on Sunday in Cleveland, where we don't know who the Jaguars starting quarterback is going to be. We think it'll be C.J. Beathard, but I guess maybe it could be Trevor Lawrence. We also don't know for sure who the Browns starting quarterback is going to be. We think it's Joe Flacco, but I guess they could play DTR, at least on some packages at least. Also, the weather might be bad coming up. Any props for you, Browns and Jaguars on Sunday in Cleveland?
Yeah, this is a really, really interesting one here because you have all these different moving factors here specifically. And it looks like Trevor Lawrence practiced today. He was throwing the ball. He was moving. So at this point, I don't have a specific bet. I'm kind of still waiting out on what we're going to see from this specific game here because there's just so much in flux, I think, both ways. So it's really one of those things where I think it's a wait and see here. But I could see, if Lawrence doesn't go, Calvin Ridley unders could be interesting with the Browns getting back Denzel Ward. I also think that Elijah Moore overs, could be interesting here as well. So I don't know, it's a couple different ways you can play it, I think.
Right. So Connor, for those who weren't watching, touches his head. That's when you think about a game like this, just oh god, I don't know what to do. And the best part is there would be enough uncertainty, and then the weather on top. Just who knows what the forecast is even going to be? Even if you get everything you want injury wise to make a bet in the game, makes it really difficult. Adam, want to talk about your Jets for a second? Just because this has been one of the most interesting betting markets of the week. This game against Houston on Sunday, where we all had jokes. Zach Wilson got benched for Tim Boyle on Black Friday against the Dolphins. And the joke was Tim Boyle's so bad that we all watched Zach Wilson. They put Tim Boyle in and everybody hated the Jets even more, thought Tim Boyle was even worse. Okay, well, Tim Boyle has been released and now Zach Wilson's back. And so maybe we should have seen this coming. That now we upgrade the Jets again. Everyone likes the Jets this week. Houston, just a 3.5 point road favorite in this game of 6.5 at the start of the week. What do you make of that move? Do you think that's smart that Zach Wilson really is that much better? How would you approach playing this game?
Okay, so right now it's a stay away, but I'll tell you some kind of behind the scenes here for how it worked. So Monday morning, we were ready to bet the Jets, and we were going to send it out at 6 and 6.5. And we got beat to it by two other groups that jumped in front of us and took it. And then it was also taken again on Tuesday morning by a third group that liked the Jets at 5.5 and 6. And so we kind of they jumped the gun on us. They got ahead of it. We couldn't get down anything. And now it's moved and we're at 3.5. All the adjustment, like you said, happened. The justification that we were looking at from that point was it's a big role change for the Texans. They've been tightly lined all season or slight underdogs. The one exception was Arizona at home. They were 5.5 point favorites at home against Arizona. That was a game late October, top of my mind. And now they were laying 6 or 6.5 on the road. They just lost Tank Dell. There's insiders saying that they're going to resort to using more 2 tight end looks, which is something that they just really have not done. And they were also going to have to do it against a good Jets defense, and they probably are going to struggle on the ground too. So it was just the role change plus everything. Wilson throws a wrench into it. Now it's down to 3.5. And I actually, as we're looking at this now on a Thursday afternoon, at this point, I think it's gone too far. I think that this adjustment up for Zach Wilson is a lot. And he's going to be kind of throttled in this spot by weather. He had this press conference where he's talking about letting it rip and opening it up, and like just ridiculous watching this and trying to keep a straight face, knowing how bad he was just a couple weeks ago. Even if he wants to try to do that, I think the weather is really going to limit what he can do. And Breece Hall is banged up, and they want to give Dalvin Cook more touches behind an O-line that can't block. I don't think much changes here for the Jets this week, and I'm surprised to see it go as far as it has now through the 4 to 3.5. So nothing here. Like the Jets early, we got jumped, and now, if anything, it's looking at Houston at kind of a suppressed number. I'm surprised how bad Boyle was, but this sure seems like a lot of credit for Zach Wilson.
It's like I always say, you never want to get jumped.